I finally became financially stable, built the career myself, and now my fiancé is angry because I refuse to let his entire homeless adult family move into my home or office, my sanity. He says this proves I'm not loyal and that I abandoned him. I, 36 female, recently experienced a very positive and long-awaited shift in my career. After years of working hard, making careful decisions, and putting my kids first, I finally reached a place where I could afford things I had always wanted but never prioritized. One of the biggest being having a space of my own to work in. Where I live, it's very common for property owners to convert small houses that face the highway into commercial spaces. Mixed-use areas are everywhere, so the idea of renting a house-to-office property didn't feel unusual or inappropriate. I found a small 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath place near the local college, and after running the numbers, I realized I could comfortably afford it. Instead of viewing it as an unnecessary luxury, I saw it as an investment in my career, my focus, and honestly, my mental health. I don't go to the office every single day. Some days I work from home, some days I split time, and some days I don't go in at all. But just knowing I have that space has been incredibly grounding. Around the same time all of this was happening, I got engaged. While I'm happy about that, it's also when I really started to see how different my fiancé's family dynamics are from my own, and how my independence seems to sit uncomfortably within those differences. My fiancé, Jason, 43 male, comes from a family that is loving in its own way, but also deeply enmeshed. There are a lot of unresolved personal issues among them that tend to overlap, and from the outside it feels like they don't feel emotionally safe unless they are all together, constantly involved in each other's lives.
I try not to judge that.
I come from a tight-knit family too, just in a very different way. We're close, but we also value independence and space. With Jason's family, the closeness feels more tense. Like proximity is used to regulate anxiety rather than to simply enjoy each other. I don't have a particularly close relationship with his family, and, to be honest, I'm not invited to most of their gatherings or events. Early on, this stung a little, but I made a conscious decision not to take it personally. I worried that pushing for closeness might actually strain my relationship with Jason, and I didn't want to create unnecessary friction. At the same time, I noticed that both his mother and sister can be very reactive, snapping, becoming rude, or shutting down conversations when things don't go their way. His youngest brother has always been kind to me and my kids, which I appreciate deeply. The second youngest brother, however, is a bit difficult. He's a band leader and carries himself like anyone who doesn't live and breathe music simply doesn't exist. It's not about money or status, just ego. I eventually decided that keeping a polite but distant relationship with the family was the healthiest option for everyone involved. After Jason and I got engaged, he changed jobs so he could be physically closer to me and we could see each other more often after work. That was a big gesture and I appreciated it. Around the same time, my office slowly became a happy place, not just for me, but for my kids as well. On some weekends, we spend time there together, working quietly, watching movies, ordering takeout, or just enjoying the change of scenery. One bedroom is strictly my work office. Another is used for files and storage. The third room, which I technically call the conference room, is never actually used for business. That's the room where we sleep. Sometimes, when my kids are invited to stay overnight at my sister's house, I choose to stay at the office instead of driving all the way home. It feels safe, comfortable, and practical. I don't have to rush, and I don't have to explain myself to anyone. I can lock the door, unwind, and exist quietly in a space that feels fully mine. I'm genuinely grateful for it, not because I'm trying to escape my life or my relationship, but because for the first time in a long time, I have a place that represents independence, stability, and something I built for myself. That said, having this office and what it represents has quietly started to put strain on my relationship. I didn't expect it to, but the more I reflect on it, the more I realize that my sense of autonomy doesn't fully align with Jason's family culture and maybe not entirely with Jason's expectations either. I hate to put it this way because it feels cruel even thinking it, but a few weeks before our engagement his family situation crossed a line for me and became what I can only describe as gross and messy. And after the proposal, it didn't calm down or resolve itself like I naively hoped. It got worse, louder, and more invasive. For background, my future father-in-law and mother-in-law are no longer together. They split up the year Jason's daughter was born, and she's 15 now. At the time of the breakup, only Jason and his sister were adults. His younger brothers were still teenagers. Jason stepped in and essentially became the safety net for everyone. He took his entire family into his life and his space, and, to this day, he still lives in the same two-bedroom apartment he had back then. That decision, while well-intentioned, heavily affected his previous marriage. His ex-wife repeatedly complained about the lack of boundaries and constant family presence. Eventually, Jason told his mother to move out. That didn't end things peacefully. His ex-wife and sister-in-law had explosive, screaming arguments, and at one point his ex-wife and his mother were yelling at each other as well. That marriage is now completely severed, and there is no relationship left between them at all. Because of all of this history, I've always been careful about how much time I spend at Jason's apartment. It's not because I dislike him or don't want to be with him. It's because I know his family gathers there frequently, and I know he genuinely looks forward to that time with them. I didn't want to interfere, compete, or create tension. We had already talked about it and agreed that when we eventually lived together, his Sundays would still be reserved for his family.
I was fine with that.
I believed there was room for both his family and a healthy, separate life with me. Then last November, things imploded. His mother and sister were kicked out of his aunt's house, where they had been staying temporarily. They moved back into the family's old home, the one that originally belonged to his grandparents, but that arrangement also blew up. They were eventually kicked out of there too, due to constant drama, fighting, and animosity with other relatives. At that point, Jason came to me stressed and overwhelmed, asking for help. Wanting to be supportive, I started sending him links to rental properties, small apartments, short-term leases, anything that could help them get back on their feet without further entangling our lives. His response was complete silence. Days went by with no acknowledgement of the listings, no discussion, nothing. Then he finally said, "We need to talk." That conversation is burned into my memory because of how uncomfortable and surreal it felt. During that call, he asked me, very directly, if I would allow his mother and sister to stay with me. I was stunned. It hadn't even occurred to me that this would be an option he'd consider. I told him no. Not angrily, not cruelly, just clearly. My home is a 4-bedroom house, and it is my children's home first and foremost. I will not disrupt their routines, displace them from their bedrooms, or expose them to ongoing family chaos. I worked hard to create stability for them, and I refuse to sacrifice that. He said he understood my answer at first, or at least he said the words, but almost immediately followed it with another suggestion, that I let them stay at my office instead. I remember feeling this cold drop in my stomach, like he hadn't actually heard a single thing I'd said. I told him no again.
Calmly. Clearly.
I explained that my office isn't just some spare property. It's the result of years of work, sacrifice, and finally getting my career to a place where it's growing the way I planned. I told him I keep sensitive files there, client records, contracts, and information protected by NDAs. Even if I locked everything up, I cannot risk it. I also reminded him that I rent the space, and that allowing people to live there could cause serious problems with my landlord and potentially cost me the office entirely. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. He kept bringing it up. Again and again. For days. Each time framed a little differently, softer at first, then edged with frustration. Eventually, I told him directly that what he was asking felt imposing. That it would literally take away my peace of mind. That I was finally standing on stable ground professionally, and I could not light that on fire to fix a situation I didn't create. I tried to be compassionate, but firm. That's when his anger came out. He got fired up fast, raising his voice, his face turning red, cutting me off every time I tried to speak. He went from sounding wounded to outright furious. He yelled at me. Not once, but multiple times that week. I ended up crying during one of those conversations, which somehow only made him angrier, like my emotional response was an inconvenience instead of a reaction to being shouted at. It felt like there was no room for my feelings at all, only his panic and rage. Eventually, after things completely spiraled, we agreed we needed to sit down and actually talk because the conversations had gone so far off the rails. I came into that discussion trying to compromise, even though every instinct in my body was telling me I was already giving too much. I suggested maybe helping his youngest brother by renting him a room somewhere, something structured, contained, and realistic. Jason seemed cautiously okay with that idea, but he was still visibly anxious, like this wasn't nearly enough. He explained that he couldn't bring his family to his apartment because displacing his daughter from her room could cause custody issues with his ex. I understood that, truly. But I finally said what I'd been holding back, that he wasn't being fair. We weren't talking about one person in a short-term crisis. We were talking about 4 adults, plus his sister's 2 children. On top of that, his brothers would almost certainly want their daughters to visit. This wasn't temporary help. It was an entire household takeover waiting to happen. Then the financial reality hit me fully, and I lost my patience.
No one was talking about rent.
No one was talking about timelines. No one was talking about accountability. I asked him directly what the plan was financially, and he shook his head at me like I was some kind of heartless monster for even asking. His mother doesn't work and needs to get back on Section 8. His sister does too. He keeps saying the wait list is long, which I believe, but that doesn't mean I'm obligated to be the solution in the meantime. His brothers have back child support payments, and Jason insists that having stable housing would help them catch up, but again, the responsibility was being quietly shifted onto me. I cannot sacrifice my professional life, my personal peace, or my children's stability to prop up a system where no one else is being asked to change. Things went quiet for a few days after that, mostly because I stopped bringing it up. I was exhausted. But then something else changed. Jason completely shut down sexually. At first, I respected it. He told me he had a lot on his mind, and that he wasn't a sex machine. I understood stress affects intimacy. But then he said something that still rings in my ears. He told me he would never forget how I abandoned him during a time of hardship. He has also started saying that I'm materially different from who he thought I was and that he needs a partner who is loyal to him. He repeats that word, loyal, over and over like a refrain. Every time he says it, it lands heavier. I swing back and forth between sitting there stunned, not knowing how to respond, and feeling a deep, simmering resentment because it feels like he's trying to bully or shame me into doing something I have been very clear I will not do. According to him, the fact that I feel forced at all is proof that I'm only in this relationship for the good times, that I don't really understand what partnership means when things get hard. That accusation hurts more than I can explain. My sister is furious with him. She caught me crying and immediately went into protective mode. She even asked if I wanted to just rent a house for his family to end the conflict and get some peace. The idea made my stomach turn. It feels worse, not better. It would set me back financially and emotionally, and it would completely undo the entire point of the sacrifices I've already made in my life, to finally reach some stability. It would mean they get exactly what they want, despite the fact that they've excluded me, dismissed me, and treated me like an outsider for years. I reminded Jason, again, that I am the only responsible parent my children have. There is no backup. There is no one else who will catch them if I fall. He says he understands and that he loves my kids, but then immediately follows it with, "You need to put yourself in my shoes." I feel like I've been standing in his shoes for months now, and my own feet are bleeding. What hurts almost as much as the situation itself is how this has changed the way he speaks to me. There's an edge now, a bitterness, sometimes outright contempt. I don't recognize it. I've also been deeply involved in his daughter's life in a way that has never caused conflict with her mother. I help her with schoolwork constantly. She comes to me because she says her mom is too strict and Jason isn't very academic. I stayed up night after night with Jason while he was trying to get his small business off the ground. When his business partner sent him a "F text and abruptly ended their agreement, I was the one who held him together. I helped contact potential clients. I wrote proposals. I acted as his emotional anchor when he was spiraling. I'm saying this not to keep score, but because I genuinely don't understand how I became the villain in his story so fast. I don't know if his family's current crisis has flipped some kind of switch in him, and now I'm the safest place to put his anger. I can't even bring these things up to him because when I do, he gets extremely upset and accuses me of throwing things in his face. I am at the absolute end of my rope. I love this man deeply. Truly. But I reached a point where I felt I had no choice but to put ending our engagement on the table. His reaction scared me. He became physically ill, crying, shaking, barely able to breathe. He said he understands me, but in the same breath accused me of weaponizing my new income and our relationship against him. Hearing that made me feel sick. Like my success, something I worked so hard for, had become a moral failure in his eyes. Now, he's offering to go to couples therapy. I know therapy can be a powerful tool, and part of me wants to believe it could help. But I'm terrified of walking into a situation where my career, my independence, and my boundaries become permanent points of resentment, where every disagreement circles back to money, loyalty, and sacrifice. I don't know if staying and trying again would be loving, or if it would just teach him that pushing harder eventually works. So here I am, full of doubt, grief, and fear, asking strangers because I don't trust my own judgment anymore. Would I be the a-hole if I went through with ending the engagement without giving him any further chances? I don't want to destroy someone I love, but I also don't want to lose myself trying to save a situation that feels fundamentally wrong. Did I do the right thing, or should I have given him my house, my office, my sanity? I think for everyone it's important to keep your ground, keep your self-respect, no need to sacrifice for someone who doesn't even care. I am open to listen about your opinions and advices, thank you.